You got to feel to heal. That's the deal. And it will be revealed. So there's no getting around it. You got to feel to heal. That's the deal. Most people shy away from pain. And I'm saying lean into pain, get curious about it, be willing to feel it.
Welcome to Magic in the Moment, Mindfulness in Real Time. My name is Clayton Platt, and I'll be your host for this podcast journey. Now, for many people, practicing mindfulness has very little to do with sitting on a cushion, lighting incense, or even focusing on their breath. Just paying attention to what they're doing at any moment, and doing this intentionally, can create that same magic. Our time together is intended to share how mindfulness plays out in everyday life for our guests. And before we begin, here's a word from our sponsor, Meditation for Leadership. We all feel it, the pressure to keep up, to perform, to push through. But lasting success doesn't come from speeding up. It comes from slowing down, leaning in, and creating the space to lead from within. That space is where we shift from autopilot to intention, building mindful habits that strengthen focus and calm. It's where we stay connected to our values and purpose, choosing to respond instead of react. It's where we unlock our potential to positively shape our own lives and empower others to grow and thrive. That's the work of Meditation for Leadership. If you're ready to create the space for sustainable success, visit meditationforleadership.org. Welcome back to Magic in the Moment, Mindfulness in Real Time. I'm Clayton Platt. Now, some of you know that every so often I go back into our archive and pull highlights from previous conversations, moments that belong together even though they happen months apart, with people who never sat in the same room. And today is one of those episodes. 3 guests, 3 very different stories, and one thread running through all of them that honestly took me 3 conversations to fully see. Andreas Weygoldt spent 15 years running a family business while quietly losing himself inside it. Depression, anxiety, substance abuse, none of it visible from the outside. Arata has devoted more than 25 years to helping men lead from the heart. And yet the hardest work of his life turned out to be learning to let love in for himself. And Kira Higgs sat down in 2020 to write a business book. And by day 2, the book said, nope. And what came instead was Winnowing, a memoir of a spiritual longing in secular life, and one of the most honest explorations of presence I've encountered on this podcast. So what connects them is something I've come to think of simply as this. The door was always open. They just had to stop pushing against it. So links to all 3 full episodes are in the show notes. But today, let's let these voices share the same room and see what they say to each other. And we'll open with a thought from Kira Higgs that I thought frames everything you're about to hear.
I'm very struck by how many hacks people come up with, talk about. It's all about optimizing for this and do it faster, better, easier. And stories pass something that instructions don't.
I want to hold that for a moment because it's actually a pretty good description of what you're about to hear. Not instructions, not a framework, 3 stories. And what they pass to you, well, that's yours to receive. Hans Weygoldt grew up the youngest of 4 children in Germany, spent 15 years in his family's business, and by his own account, had everything he was supposed to want. Good income, stability, a future mapped out in front of him. And beneath all of it, a hollowness he couldn't name and couldn't shake. What broke something open wasn't therapy, wasn't a leadership program. It was breath work. And it was in that session that something he hadn't been able to do in 15 years of trying arrived.
At that time, at my first breathwork session, every thought in my mind ceased to exist. And without that thought, I stopped projecting my past into the future, and that helped me to stay present. And in this moment, there was just bliss and beauty and the understanding that the only thing that's holding me back is those thoughts and beliefs that I hold on to and struggle to let go of.
Every thought ceased to exist. I want you to sit with that for a second, because for most of us, certainly for me, the mind is so relentlessly occupied that the idea of it simply going quiet feels almost theoretical, something that happens to other people in other circumstances, on longer retreats than the ones we can manage. And yet Hans is describing something that happened in a single session, not after years of practice, right there on the first try. What the breath gave him wasn't peace as an achievement. It was peace as a revelation, the sudden understanding that the noise that he'd been living inside wasn't the truth of who he was. It was just noise. And the moment he stopped feeding it, it stopped. But here's the thing about that kind of opening. It doesn't automatically resolve what came before it. Hans still had 15 years of choices to reckon with. He still had guilt, shame, and a story about himself that hadn't changed just because his mind went quiet for an hour. What changed was something entirely different.
The major transition was gratitude. I stopped regretting my past lifestyle choices and realized that my past lifestyle choices brought me to where I am today. And today I'm the happiest man alive. I'm just filled with love and gratitude. And I think that was a powerful moment when I stopped rejecting my past, but accepting it. And with that, I stopped blaming my substance abuse for my depression, for my anxiety. And at that moment, the substance lost all the grip they had over me.
I stopped rejecting my past. That line gets me every time. Not, I forgave myself, not, I made peace with it. He stopped rejecting it. He stopped treating his own history as something to be kept outside the door. And the moment he did, the moment he turned toward it rather than away from it, the substances lost their grip. Not because he white-knuckled his way through, but because he stopped giving them the power that came from blaming them. That distinction matters. Blame keeps the door locked from the inside. Acceptance is what finally turns the handle. Which brings me to Ray.
I didn't know what love looked like, so I didn't trust it, I didn't recognize it, but somehow I knew how to love others. And what I've learned is that when I see you, hear you, respect you, value you, all for being you, that's love.
Ray Arata has spent decades in rooms with men who don't know how to receive. He's watched them deflect compliments, resist care, keep even the people closer to them at arm's length. Not out of cruelty, but out of a kind of learned self-sufficiency that got coded in early and never got updated. He knows this territory so well, it turned out, because he was living in it himself. He could love. He was extraordinary at loving others. 20,000 hours of evidence for that. What he couldn't do was let it come back. The door only opened one way. And then his body intervened.
My own experience of tremendous pain with my knees and my shoulders took me to the brink, to the point where I had no other choice but to let go. But the question becomes, what was it that I needed to let go of? And what I learned in my recent therapy-assisted medicine journey was I needed to let go of a belief, a deeply held, hidden belief, that I didn't deserve to feel good. and that I didn't deserve love. Now imagine if those two belief systems are etched in at a very young age. If we don't get love, we die. So we have to create strategies in order to get love. And so for your listeners, you could be the hero, you could be the rescuer, you could be the nice guy, the nice gal, the do-gooder. There's a whole host of strategies that I'm sure your listeners and watchers are familiar with. I also let go is that I don't need to do anything to earn love. That's no small statement.
I didn't deserve to feel good. And I didn't deserve love. Two beliefs etched in early, invisible for decades, precisely because they were so deeply held. The kind of belief that doesn't announce itself, that just quietly shapes every decision, every relationship, every moment of deflection. What I find remarkable about Ray's story isn't that he discovered these beliefs, it's what it took to surface them. Not insight, not talk therapy. Physical pain is so relentless, so total, that his usual strategies simply couldn't hold. You know, the body has a way of asking for what the mind keeps refusing to address, and Ray's body asked loudly. But even knowing what needed to happen didn't make it easy, because letting love in, really letting it in, requires something most of us find genuinely difficult.
You got to feel to heal. That's the deal. And it will be revealed. So there's no getting around it. You got to feel to heal. That's the deal. Most people shy away from pain. And I'm saying lean into pain, get curious about it, be willing to feel it.
You got to feel to heal. That's the deal. Simple, almost uncomfortably so. And Ray will be the first to tell you that simple isn't the same as easy. Most of us have spent a lifetime developing remarkably sophisticated systems for not feeling. Busyness, achievement, and self-sufficiency, the quiet armor of always being the one who's fine, just fine. Those systems work up to a point, and then they don't. And then the bill comes due. What Ray is describing isn't suffering for its own sake. It's the willingness to stop treating pain as the enemy, to get curious about it rather than running from it, to ask, as he puts it, what is this teaching me? And that's a different relationship with the door entirely. Not forcing it, not barricading it, just standing in front of it and asking, what's on the other side? Hans would say the breath is what gave him the courage, and Ray would say it was the pain itself. Kira Higgs would say it was something quieter still, a practice that accumulated over years, so gradually she didn't notice it working.
I like to call breathwork a catalyst of developing unused human potential, because it helps you remove everything that's standing in between you and your highest potential, all these limiting beliefs, emotions, judgments, blames.
Removing everything standing between you and your highest potential. That's what breathwork is for Hans. Not adding something, removing something, clearing the accumulated debris of limiting beliefs, old identities, inherited stories about who we are and what we're worth. And it's worth pausing on that word, removing, because so much of what we're told about growth and development is additive. Learn this skill, develop this habit, build this capacity. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with any of that. But Hans and Ray are pointing at something different. The suggestion that what stands between us and the life we want isn't a deficit. It isn't something missing, but something present that doesn't belong, something we've been carrying so long, we've mistaken it for ourselves. And Kira Higgs built an entire book around that idea. and she called it winnowing.
My game was entirely different. And I was only playing the ball. It was the relationship between me and the ball, not my opponent, and not the desire to rack up another win on whatever scoreboard that is. Just the ball. And my experience of the sport that year was so completely joyful. It was very quiet. It was very intimate because it was just me and the ball.
I love that story for so many reasons, not the least because Kira is describing a squash court, a place that I've known pretty well for a long time. But what she's really describing is what happens when we remove the audience from the inside of our own heads. The opponent, the scoreboard, the accumulated weight of every previous match, every expectation, every voice telling us what this moment is supposed to mean. And when all that falls away, something becomes available, not through effort, but through the absence of effort, through what she calls grace. That word matters. Grace isn't something you achieve. It isn't a reward for the right practice or the right attitude. It arrives when the conditions are right, when you've cleared enough space, quieted enough noise, let go of enough of what was blocking it. Hans found it in a breath. Ray found it at the bottom of physical pain. Kira found it on a squash court, and then again years later in a very different kind of room.
I bought a one-way ticket. I didn't know when I would be coming home, but I knew it wouldn't be all that long. It ended up being about 3.5 weeks. He fought to the end. His animal body didn't want to let go. That was actually really powerful to witness, how much the animal body wants to keep living. And when he died, it was about 4 a.m. My mom was on, she and I were the two people on rotation. She was with him when he died, and she was singing to him, which when I learned that brought tears to my eyes. And she came up around 8 a.m. and she said, "Your father's passed," and he's downstairs. When I went into the bedroom, it was profound. The atmosphere was very different from the rest of the house. I felt presences, not just one, but it was like some, I don't know, team of angels had spread across the room, and I could just feel the way they were holding him.
A team of angels spread across the room. I have listened to that passage many times now, and it moves me every time. Not because I know exactly what Kira experienced in that room. I don't. And she would be the first to say that the language barely reaches it, but because of what she had to do to be there for it. She bought a one-way ticket. She set aside years of estrangement, arrived with what she calls a clean slate, and simply showed up. No agenda. No unfinished business to process in those final weeks. Just presence for a man who needed it and a daughter finally able to offer it. That is winnowing in its most complete form. Clearing away everything that would have kept her on the other side of that door and walking through. So here we are. 3 people, 3 doors, 3 different ways of finally letting what was always there arrive. Hans learned that the breath is the most direct route home he's ever found. That when the mind goes quiet, what's left isn't emptiness, but something closer to truth. Ray learned that the love he'd been giving away for decades was always meant to come back. That receiving isn't weakness, it's completion. And Kira learned The presence isn't something you manufacture in the right circumstances. It's what remains when you stop manufacturing everything else. The door was always open. It just took each of them, and if I'm being perfectly honest, it takes most of us a while to stop pushing against it. If today's episode stirred something in you, I'd encourage you to go back into the full conversations. Links to Hans, Ray, and Kira are in the show notes. Each one is so well worth your time in its own right. And if you're listening or watching on YouTube, please subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, a rating or review makes a tremendous difference. It's so appreciated. It helps other people find these conversations. And honestly, your reviews often teach me something about what's landing, what matters to you, where to go next. So until next time, I'm Clayton Platt, and watch for those moments of magic in your life where mindfulness shows up in real time. Hey, thanks for listening. I want to give a big shout out to John Gehring of Story Trust Media for his expert editing and wonderful production guidance. I also am deeply grateful for the ongoing support I receive from Meditation for Leadership and their sponsorship. So that's all for now. Until next time, this is Clayton Platt saying, watch for those moments of magic when mindfulness shows up in real time in your life.